have our public hearing on the student attendance policy. So, Kim?
Yeah, so I'll set it up for Kim. The policy committee's been reviewing our student policy. Per the regulation, you have to have a form of hearing, so we notice it out. I don't think there's substantial changes to it, but I want to make sure we follow the rules. So, Kim, anything to highlight in terms of changes from the previous policy? Or?
No, I think the major challenge was this policy was originally adopted in 2002, and it looks like it was amended in 2016. So at this point, it's become somewhat outdated, especially in light of the high school. So really what we did is we reached out to all of our building principals, had them review it. They suggested some changes to get it more in line with our current practice. The biggest changes were at the high school level. So, and in addition, there's some additional language that address attendance incentives, which is now required per law. Homeless students, and also there's now a passage about remote learning in the event the district engages in remote learning, just how we would capture attendance. So really, some overhauls at the high school level, but nothing particularly substantive, I guess.
Any questions or comments from the public?
Oh, we can talk?
Yes.
Oh,
About the
okay.
student attendance.
About this, this is a public
About the
hearing,
student
it's not
attendance
the meeting.
Okay, oh, I just wanted to ask about the remote learning. Is that something that,
That's
Any-
not the student attendance policy, right?
oh,
It's
is that
in
what
the,
you-
it's in the attendance policy, there is
The
a
remote-
reference
yeah.
to remote learning.
Okay, all right, then ask your question, sorry.
I guess my question is, can you expand on that? Is that something where you're desirous of that being like a go-to a lot, or?
No, it would only be most likely in an emergency situation, and it's just outlines how we would capture attendance just to make sure that students are attending their remote session.
Does it outline what an emergency would be, or is it just whatever's deemed an emergency?
So,
I'm not sure.
No, I don't think so,
I don't
it's
think
just,
defined.
right, it's not defined in this particular policy.
do you want to read
Are
what
you
it has
asking
about
as it
remote?
relates to like a personal family emergency versus a public health emergency, is that what
I
you're
mean,
asking?
like, yeah, what would qualify as an emergency? Is it gonna be like, oh, we have
A health
declared,
emergency, is that
you know, 50 people have a cold, so we're declaring an emergency. We're going to remote learning, like what qualifies like as an emergency? Because it's,
That's
seems like
not,
it's very,
well, you can comment, that's
subjective.
not addressed in this policy. What's addressed is how teachers will take attendance when
Oh, okay.
remote
All
learning
right.
occurs.
Right.
That's what's addressed in this. Yeah, that's why I was a little confused, because I forgot that we do address taking attendance to monitor student participation if it's a virtual classroom. It doesn't define when that happens, when the virtual classroom type happens in this policy. Go ahead, Kim.
I think that's really the gist of the changes, so I don't know if there's any other questions or comments.
Just one, this is what was emailed out to the community prior to the start of school, right? This,
It was in the video.
right, and I remember receiving an email with an attachment to it, so I just wanna make sure, That-
The current policy.
yes.
Yeah, the high school sent out a pretty detailed video about attendance and what the expectations are for the students. I think there was a big, I don't have my microphone on. I think there was a big problem with student attendance during COVID, kids coming in late all the time consistently. So I think they have made some changes to prevent that, because it is very disruptive to the classroom. when they're late, and of course, there's times when they're going to be late for certain reasons that are expected or unexpected. But consistently, there was some students having issues, so I think that having the policy a little more out in front of people was important.
Any other questions or comments?
Any more from the public? Okay. We'll
Close the hearing.
Yep, we'll close the hearing, then we will officially open our board meeting for this month, on this Monday, September 12th, 2022. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. That brings us to our superintendent report.
No, this is wheelchair.
All right. So just a couple brief things here in the report. Last month, we did a recommendation for the order to the board about the financial health of our community education program. We've been able to get some more information together. We shared that with the board, and now we are going to be able to spend some time kind of analyzing that and diving deeper into it and looking around ways to kind of close that deficit. So we'll continue to get some information together on that and be able to report back to you. Pleased to announce that we started a brand new recognition program, our Warrior of the Month. What we're going to do is have employees nominate their colleagues, and then the district office team will select someone, and they'll be named the Averill Park Warrior of the Month. Our first winner was Lisa Olson. Lisa took over the role of COVID coordinator. She worked with us Post Kill and Algonquin as an aide, and then took that role on. It was extremely challenging. She did a fantastic job, and really was a key player in getting us through this past year. And then finally, there's a little update there on the air purifiers. You may see some stories about the use of these in classrooms throughout the state, and especially in our area. In our county, just so you're aware, we're getting 2 purifiers per school, and they have been specified to be used in our health offices and our isolation spaces. We have, on our own, purchased more. You can see there, we've actually ordered 7. We've already got those in place, and we put those in our music rooms, able to kind of help out our music folks who realize there's a little more risk there. So just a quick update. I know some of the media reports, at least, that are out there are stating that they're in every classroom. I just want people to know it's not how it's going to be here for us. One other update that had not been in the report that I just got at the end of the day, I did talk to Heath, and we will have a student rep for the next board meeting. If all goes as planned, they have their leadership meeting next week, and he's hoping to have someone lined up. So ideally, the October meeting, you'll see the return of our student rep to the board. And this month's video. All right, that video and catchy tune brought to you by Brian Radowitz, so thank you to him. And that concludes the board report.
All right, thank you. I love the fact that we're a week and not even a week into school, and we have that much to celebrate already. So that's wonderful. Speaks to the quality of our district, I think. That brings us to item number 5, public comment. This public comment period is limited to topics on this evening's agenda. Those wishing to address the board are asked to complete the request form and submit it to the board clerk in order to be recognized by the board president. And comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. I don't have any blue sheets right now, and there will be a public comment period open to any topic at the end of the meeting, so. Nothing? Okay. All right, moves on to item number 6, the approval of the minutes of the August 15th, 2022 meeting. Megan makes a motion and seconds. Do I have any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call it to vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The minutes are passed. Brings us to item number 7, presentation on the capital project. Do you want to introduce?
Sure, thank you. So we're lucky to have Tony with us. Tony is going to speak to us about our now active capital project. We thought it would be a good opportunity to update the board and the community about what is going on with that capital referendum. And thank Tony for being here and walking us through what is happening in the world of capital projects.
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to present tonight. We want to give you a brief update, but also open up for questions at the end. So if you feel you got a question, it won't take more than 5 minutes to go through the quick presentation. We really wanted to give you an overview of capital projects in general in this particular project because there are a lot of standard processes that need to go through in a capital project's execution. You've been through the planning phase, you've been through the referendum phase, but now we're into the administration of the project, how the project is submitted to the state education department, how it's bid and awarded, how it's constructed, how that's communicated and coordinated and controlled. So we're going to walk through 5 or 6 major topics to talk about that process and how that works and what our current status is. The overview of the project, I think everyone understands we're basically addressing improvements in each one of the 7 buildings the district owns and operates. There are about $28.5 million worth of improvements that will be phased over the next 63 months between the referendum passing in October of 2021 and the completion by the end of 2026. There are 3 planned primary phases, and we're going to talk about a modification recently to that, but 3 phases that break up the bus garage and the district-wide intruder hardware implementation project, which is phase 1. Phase 2 is the improvements at Algonquin Middle School and the high school, and phase 3 are the improvements at the elementary schools. The timeline generally for the project, we are starting construction now. In fact, today was our first day of construction. So I spent the day on the roof at the bus garage today, but that day, so this is a big event for the district. We will be progressing with construction all the way through now through the end of 2026, progressively working through the buildings. When the board approved the project and presented to the voters June of 2021, voters approved in October of 2021, it set the major parameters for the level of investment, the types of improvements, and what's to be focused on. And as you recall, it was really based on healthy buildings and health and welfare of our students and our staff by maintaining our building conditions that had been deteriorating or needs to be improved to be kept up to snuff, and security. Those are the main focuses of the project's development. The project schedule, this is what we call a Gantt chart, which outlines each one of the phases of construction, each one of the buildings that are involved, and it breaks it down by standard guiding principles in terms of the sequence of work. So we'll have the preparation of design documents, the review by the state education department. Every building has to have its plans submitted to the state education department for review and approval to issue a building permit. And not until a building permit is actually issued by SED can the district move forward with the bidding of the project. We've obviously done that with the phase one projects. You awarded contracts earlier this year in July and August to allow phase one projects to move forward, which are now underway. Phase two has just gone into SED last week. So and we are preparing, the architects are preparing the phase three plans now. This shows the flow of the projects as it goes across the timeline between 2021 and 2026. And you'll see the heart of the project, which is the improvements at Algonquin Middle School and the high school, are basically 2 years of construction. It'll predominantly be over the summers, not during the school year, but there will be some after-hours school year work. That'll be in the summer of 23 and 24 primarily, and completing in 26 and 25. The elementary schools will be 25 and 26. And again, mostly summer work with some after-hours work during the school year. And we'll talk a little bit how that's organized in a minute. The project team, who's involved with the implementation of the project. So at Saratoga Project Management, which I'm a principal of, are the owner's representatives and project managers. We're your representatives in making sure the project is organized, implemented correctly, and overseen properly. We report to the superintendent and provide information to the board and to the superintendent, the assistant superintendent for business, to talk about the process and the implementation of the project. Mosaic Architects is the architect of record, and they also engage all the engineers, the mechanical engineers, plumbing, electrical, structural engineers, and they all work under, as the design professionals of record, they stamp and seal all the documents. They're licensed in New York State. All of that's required for the state education department to issue permits for the project. And then the last component are the contractors. And those are the contractors that competitively bid and are selected and presented to you when bids are received to make the selections and the awards. And they're the parties that are responsible to implement what the design professionals have required in the contract documents and were approved by the state education department. That's the process. This is an organizational chart. It's got a lot of boxes on it, but basically what it says is that you are in charge. The Board of Education is the owner of all the improvements of the school district, and you do that through the superintendent and the superintendent's administrative team to basically coordinate and organize how the project is executed. So our intent is to regularly report on the project status and progress to you, and of course we do that monthly and weekly in some cases to the superintendent and his administrative staff to basically understand the progress, progression, and the important decisions that need to be made on a monthly basis as we go through the course of the project. Saratoga Project Management, as the owner's representatives, coordinates the activities of the design team as well as the contractors and the other consultants, and also works to prepare certain forms that are required by the state education department related to costs and final cost submissions, which we do with Carrie and her staff. Roles and responsibilities, the team players, who's involved. Well, we call it the owner's triangle, and I'll show you a diagram in a minute. It's all about roles and responsibilities and checks and balances. And really, again, it's the architects and the engineers, the owner and the contractors. And that's all controlled through two types of contract documents: plans and specifications, the technical side of the documents that are prepared by the architects and engineers, and the contract documents, the legal agreements that bind the roles and responsibilities of the parties involved, the owner, the architects, and the contractors, on how to implement successfully so that the owner knows exactly what we're supposed to get. That's what we are. The owner is the school district. So the owner triangle really identifies the three parties, and it really has to be a three-legged stool. It won't stand unless all three legs are there. And the important part of the process is what the owner's responsibilities are as a school district. So your responsibilities as a district are to implement or to engage an architect to prepare the design documents and get them permitted. Your responsibilities are to engage contractors to perform the work. And your responsibilities are to basically oversee and make sure that the contractors have performed successfully through an agent, which is what Saratoga Project Management does. That's our responsibility. And to make sure that all three entities are working together in coordinated effort throughout the course of the project. We will report and talk about that process and how that's being implemented on a monthly basis so that people understand. Because not every project goes smoothly. Sometimes there are hiccups, there are discovered conditions, there are problems that get encountered. There's changes that are required because the educational environment has demands. And construction should always take a back seat to the needs and requirements of the educational program. So we have to be adaptive and responsive to that. The primary documents that are involved in a contract, we talk about plans, which are the graphic representation, the specifications, those are the technical aspects of the plans, the types of products, the manufacturer requirements, the performance specifications, the construction documents themselves, the general conditions and supplemental conditions, the owner-architect agreement, the SED authorizations and permits, the resolutions that you pass, and of course, all this doesn't happen until the voters approve, which of course they have in October of 2021. These are the primary driving documents that affect all the implementation of this project. So oversight, management, and project controls. This is the most important part of making sure you have a successful project in delivery. And there are 6 primary aspects of management and oversight. Financial management, time, which is your project schedule, quality control, regulatory compliance, making sure we meet all the requirements of the State Education Department, which is the sole authority that has purview over the construction of the project. There's no local building officials. It all happens through the State Education Department. Health and safety, major issue. The commissioner's regulations specifically require in section 155.5 of the commissioner's regulations on health and safety and welfare of students, staff, and visitors to buildings during construction and how that's regulated. Those are contract requirements. We put them in the contract documents. We review them. We'll review them with the Health and Safety Committee, with the District Facilities Committee. They'll be a continual part of how we operate construction. All construction activities, just so everyone's aware, needs to be fully separated from occupied environments. So there's always a hard wall, there's always a fence, there's always a separation between construction activities and school operations. There's ID badges, there's a checking in of all personnel and workforce that come onto the property. We know who everyone is. That's very, very, very important to successfully implement a construction project in a school environment. And then last but not least, communication. These kinds of presentations, monthly updates we provide to the superintendent, understanding where the project is and how it's proceeding. It's important for you, it's important for the superintendent and his staff, it's important for the community to understand where the project is, how it's proceeding, and how it's progressing. Financial control, budget control. There are risks involved in every construction project. Every construction project has the risk of being over budget. And the way you control risk from being over budget is to constantly monitor costs, to understand budgets, the basis of the budget, and where current estimates are. And then when contracts are awarded, that they're within line of budget or in line of budget with contingencies, and how to manage and track that process. So we budget contingent dollars for construction. We do it for design. We do it for market cost escalation. And we even have an owner's contingency to cover a catch-all to make sure there's enough money allocated to make sure the project can be successfully implemented and done within the overall resources and financing of the project. Cost control and accounting is the second major piece of this, and this is the tracking of all of the contracts, the monthly applications for payment that get submitted by the contractors that go through and are reviewed by the architect. Saratoga Project Management is the owner's representatives, then the district, then are processed through the district's payment process. The payment claims auditor reviews all of them, makes sure they comply with the contract documents. There are 3 to 4 levels of compliance in every single invoice that is approved and reviewed to be paid from the proceeds that are done with the bond referendum. Quick checklist of some of those items. The accounting system, which Carrie and her team supervise, we basically use a standard set of accounting structures that are set up at the State Education Department, part of our regular reporting processes. The construction contracts are all either competitively bid or awarded under state contract or equivalent to a state contract, so there's always competitive solicitation. There's always a dollar amount that can be identified clearly in a competitive world so that we know how to award the contract. We also have monthly invoicing processes, as I mentioned, 3 tiers of review. All monthly costs are put into a single draw package that go to the business office to be processed and paid. Payment claims auditing, and then of course change order review. So change orders, what are change orders? Change orders are modifications to the original contract issued to any one of our contractors that may be caused by a number of things. Most importantly, change conditions. Unforeseen conditions that couldn't be contemplated by the contractor because they can't see inside walls. Errors or omissions that can occur in the contract documents prepared by the architects and engineers. Things they didn't contemplate, didn't include in the contract documents, so the contractor wasn't aware they needed to be done, but yet still do need to be done to either meet code or the program objective that was identified when the plans were prepared. Those are all important aspects of how we look at what could cause a change order. There's also things that the district may decide they want to change. We may decide that as we're looking at something, we say we want to expand or enhance or otherwise modify something that was in the original authorization, but to a little bit more extent than was originally planned because of, it could be a number of conditions, but it all has to stay within the original approved budget amounts of the referendum. It all has to be reviewed and approved by you. So no one gets to be able to make those choices. You make those choices through recommendations of the superintendent and the project team. But those change orders will come up as a part of the process, and we have a contingency in our budgets so that we can address those things as they occur, and that's the construction contingency. And then last, as we go through that, is the budget tracking process, to know that when we look at base contract awards and we look at change orders and how they accumulate over the course of the project as the projects are being built, that we're staying within the budgeted parameters of the overall project. And that's our monthly budget process. And then finally, that's capped off when it's all done with a final cost report that gets submitted to the state education department. And that's the trigger that allows the state education department to review and sign off on the final cost for the project and start the flow of aid. So those are very important things. About Carrie and I were just talking about that earlier today with the phase 1 project. Project development process. There are basically 8 major steps, and I just want to put in context where we are and where we're going. Planning and approval, we've already done, which is the first step with the voter approval. Design, there's lots of nomenclature involved with construction, standard terms, it's almost like the military. So you'll be hearing a lot of these terms. Design, schematic design is the first level of design, gets you about 30 or 40% of the overall design completion, gets you basically an outline of what needs to be done. Design development is the second phase, gets you to about 70 to 80% of the design's development so that the contract documents aren't fully complete, but it's a major milestone in how the design is progressing for completion. And then construction documents is 100% complete. That's what's submitted to the state education department for permit. And that allows us to know the full scope of what needs to be built and how it's intended to be built. Then the state education department receives those submissions and they review, and it can take a couple months. I've seen it take as much as 6 or 8 months in some cases. We use an expedited submission process, so we try to get that done as quickly as possible. But the idea is that then the plan reviewers at state education department review for compliance with code to make sure that it meets all the building standards that the state education department sets outside and above code, and then they review and issue a permit. It's called the commissioner's approval, and then when that is issued, that allows the district to move forward with the bidding process, which is when we go out to the market and publicly notice the opportunity for contractors to propose on the plans and specifications and submit bids. After the bids are awarded, we go into the pre-construction phase, which is really focused on the contractors preparing submittals, information that needs to be provided to the architects and engineers for review prior to the start of construction. It's critical technical information. It includes things like the purchase and procurement of mechanical equipment that needs to make sure that it complies with the performance criteria that are in the plan specifications before it's ordered. Those are the types of things that have to be approved by the engineers before the contractors proceed. And then the construction phase, which is pretty self-evident. At the end of the construction phase, before the contractors are done, the architects, the engineers, and the owner's representative will walk the projects for each contractor, and we'll walk through and look at all the plans and specifications of what was supposed to be done, and we'll develop a punch list, a list of items that are not completed or haven't been satisfactorily completed to a point where they're almost done. Write that up, value it, and then that gives the direction of the contractor of what's needed to be done before final closeout. When those things are completed, it's reviewed again, signed off by the architects and the engineers and the owner's representative, and then final payments can be made and the contracts are closed out. That's important because that takes time and it defines the end of the project and the end of the payment process. And then after the final payments are made, there's a 1-year warranty period when if there's a defect or something comes up that's within a warranted item, meaning it's covered in a type of guarantee, so to speak, that makes the contractor come back and correct anything that comes up in that 1-year period of deficiency. Now, some mechanical equipment has longer periods. Roofs have a 20-year warranty period, so they're extended. But in general, on general construction, it's a 1-year period. The Board of Education's role in the process is very, very important, and there are several milestones in which you will be involved. You obviously were involved again in approving the project and presenting to the voters and then accepting the voters' results. At the time of the construction document completion, the second bullet, when design documents are completed and SED submissions are required, the board president, along with the superintendent, needs to sign off on the documentation to be able to be submitted to the state education department. Until that sign off is done, we can't submit, we can't get an approval. At the time of bidding and construction award is really the most important next step, which is every single individual contract that's bid and award we brought to you with a bid tabulation, who proposed, what the proposal amounts were, what the conditions were, the recommendation of the architect and the construction manager as to what should be awarded based on the responsiveness of the bids, and then you make those actions to award those contracts. And then, of course, any subsequent changes to that, which will be change orders that I spoke about earlier. And then also, like tonight, a construction progress update. What's going on with the project? Where do we stand? How is it progressing? And then finally, when the final projects are closed out, before we can submit the final cost reports, we also have to, again, the board president and superintendent sign off on the final submissions to be able to submit them to the state education department for final processing and aid approval. So where are we tonight? Phase 1 projects, which is the bus garage, which includes several components, a roof restoration project, the replacement of all the overhead doors, a small water heater that needs to be replaced, and a district-wide intruder hardware. It's kind of the cleanup of the intruder hardware program that we've been doing for, I think, 10 years. This is the wrap-up of all of the intruder hardware protections to be put in place. Those are the phase 1 projects. So our contracts are awarded in July and August. You acted on those contracts. Work commenced today on the bus garage, as I mentioned earlier. The intruder hardware work will start next Monday and actually will wrap up fairly quickly in a couple weeks. So it's not going to take a long time to get the intruder hardware work completed. The roof work will last through the end of October, and then that will be cleaned up and ready to be finalized. The last part of the project is the overhead door replacement. And I think somebody asked a question at a prior board meeting, what are lead times and things like that for supply chain issues and other things. The metal doors and the apparatus and the motors to operate the overhead doors is one of those items. So the manufacturers have been responsive. We actually got a pretty good window of completion, but we told all the bidders, either you can get the work done in the fall and prior to the beginning of December when snow flies and it gets really complex to do construction and the bus movements in and out of the garage, or you have to wait till the spring. Well, they couldn't get the orders fulfilled with manufacturing until the spring. So we'll start about March 1 and we'll complete that work by the middle to end of August of next year. And that will wrap up the replacement of all the doors in the bus garage. We have a new phase called Phase 1A, A for acceleration. It's taking a part of the work that was originally identified in Phase 2 and Phase 3 that became super urgent and critical. Basically, it is advancing the replacement of the boiler at Algonquin Middle School because it literally is failing, and we needed to get that document set in place and in front of SED so we could get the boilers ordered. So we prepared a set of documents that went in June, and we're waiting for SED approval so we can order the boiler replacement to do it next year because we really can't go but one more winter without having that replaced. Similarly, the same with the domestic water heater at West Sand Lake. So those are the two accelerated components that became Phase 1A. We'll be doing that work next summer and into the early fall to get that wrapped up by the end of the year. The roof at the bus garage, this is the overview of the roof itself. The center section was done in the 2013 referendum. It was replaced. So we're doing the two ends of the bus garage. And we've actually started on the right-hand side, which is the east side of the property, and we're currently doing the cleaning of the roof, and we'll be doing a fluid applied coating on the existing roof. The existing roof is in fantastic condition. If you had walked up on the roof, you'd say, I don't think we actually need a new roof. But when you look at the thickness of the existing membrane roof that's on there, it's actually deteriorated. So we're going to put a fluid applied product on top of that, and we'll build that back up to a 20-year warranty thickness. It's a great economical way of getting things done, much more efficient than tearing off the roof and putting a whole new roof on, much more green and environmentally friendly, and in today's market, much more quickly completed. This is a picture of the roof. And then the bus garage doors. So that's phase one. Now in phase two, Algonquin Middle School and High School, SED received our documents for approval and review on September 8th. We're hoping to have that approval in place by November so that we can go out to bid in December and January and award in February at the latest. That's our goal. We'll start construction the end of June of 23, and we'll substantially complete 2 summers later, August of 25, with a closeout in the fall of 25. Phase 3, the elementary schools, schematic design is commenced. It's anticipated to be completed in May. It actually doesn't need to be completed that quickly, but that's the timeline that Mosaic has agreed to. We'll submit for a State Education Department review in May. We expect that to be done by September. We'll bid and award in October and December of 24, a year later. The reason we can't get all the work going at the same time, the contracting market doesn't have the capability to do all this work at the same time in all of our buildings. There's too much work going on in the Capital District in general. There's not enough contractors, there's not enough labor. So we're spreading the project out. And this is in compliance with the way the schedule was presented to the board during the pre-ref planning phase and early implementation phase. So this is not new, but I wanted to highlight that so people are aware of it. So we'll be commencing that construction work in June of 25 after the end of the school year and running through the August of 26 with closeout by the end of the year of 26. I went through that fast, so questions?
So my first question is just whether we can get a hold of that presentation in paper or.
Absolutely.
It'll be loaded in Word docs.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you, that it was very comprehensive and said in a way that was clear. It's my dad used to do project management on very big projects, and clarity and communication, you know, I appreciate the last but not least, because understanding what everyone's job is and laying the timeline out like that is really part of it. When you had your Gantt chart slide, the way you explained it, I was like, oh, you know, that's like a verbal org chart, what he's telling us, and then your next slide is the org chart. So I can't wait to look. I know, I'm looking for it. I know. It's okay, you can think it. So I just appreciate that, and I'm looking forward to look to do that with that a little bit later. And then my only other question was, because you answered the issue about the contractors. Not surprised that it's harder to find. Just to be clear, when we say that there's a boiler failing at AMS, like they still have heat.
Yes.
It's our job to make sure the kids are warm and healthy. So like failing doesn't mean like tomorrow it's gonna like.
Thanks to Aaron Hefner and Bill Sansone and Mike Ernst and a lot of people working very hard over this summer to basically break the boiler down and rebuild it because it was leaking, so it would last one more year. You know, in April Park, we're very frugal, right? We wait to the last minute until we have to spend money, and that's what we did. But we were at its last year, so there's no more years after this. That's why we had to make it more critical than it was originally planned.
Just a couple of, general, wow, very comprehensive, excellent. And one thing I really liked is that every part of every phase is addressed and on a timeline and really set out and organized, which is, of course, with a project this size,
really important. August 2026, we're gonna be starting all over again, right? This whole process, right? Isn't it every 5 years? Or we should be doing it every 5 years?
What we would call good stewardship of facilities is there's a capital plan in the mix for every 5 years, because typically at some point in some building system, it's at the end of a life cycle. And that's regular. And the more we plan for that, the steadier and more level it is, and the lower cost it is to the taxpayer. When we don't plan it in a level format and we do only these big bumps every 15 or 20 years, the costs are 2 or 3 or 4 times what they would otherwise be if it was done in a level, strategic and programmatic way. And that's
Sounds
what
like
we
our
always
best
recommend.
replacement plan, kind
That's
of
right.
like the rollover
That's
of,
right.
these become obsolete, it's time to replace before it's a big problem. Generally, off the top of your head, if you know, just, and this is a curiosity thing, out of the 26 million, 28.5, do you know the breakdown of costs between the 3 phases generally, or no? Just that was a curiosity thing, don't like.
I should know right off the top of my
Because
head,
don't
but I always
we
refer to.
start making payments,
So
interest payments?
phase 1 and phase 2 right now bring us to about 17.5 million of the 20, so about 60% is either bid and award or designed and in for review and approval, which is really good. And the sooner we get that in, the better off we are to SED for review and approval. The last 40 or so percent is really phase 3, which is the elementary schools.
One more just silly question. You said that we're going to be replacing a domestic water heater. Is there foreign water
No,
heater?
it's not. It was how we refer to the in-house water system. So that's what they call it, domestic water. It's actually a technical term.
Okay. Domestic. I do a lot of facilities work at, well, no, bookkeeping kind of things at my job, and I see that all the time, and it came up again. I'm like, I'm just gonna ask.
Yep, that's what it
This is
means.
domestic
Yeah.
water
So
heater.
it's architects and engineers speak for it's inside the building and inside the system, as opposed to it's outside the building coming in from municipal utility or some other source.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure.
Go ahead, Megan.
Very well done. Just a point of clarification for the public who may not be aware, but I'm aware in my professional capacity, that part of the limitation on the construction community, and that relates to the SED and state contracts require contractors to be of a certain caliber. They have to be able to be surety bonded. They have to carry certain insurance requirements, and they have to meet all those contract requirements. And not every contractor in the Capital District can afford to operate at that level. And so that limits the scope of contractors that we can have bidding for the projects. And they're also bidding for other state-related projects. And so there's, like you said, so much going on in the Capital District. And a lot of those high-level contractors are also facing labor shortage issues and having trouble being able to staff and man the number of projects that need to be done. So just in terms of confirming what you're saying and clarifying for the public that it's just not so simple as just hire a contractor.
Excellent points, and I omitted that, and I should have spoken to it. That's 100% accurate, and the requirements are very stringent. 100% payment performance bonds are required. That takes the caliber of the contractor up quite high. There's also prevailing wage reporting requirements, so monthly payroll certifications that need to be going, weekly payroll. There's a lot of paperwork that has to go in. Levels of insurance, all important, that bring up the sophistication of contractors, and there's a limited pool.
How's the turnaround at state ed these days? I know for a few years back, it was like 9 months, a year, and this schedule is what, 2-3 months built in?
It ranges from 2 to 5. The state education department has been doing a remarkable job given how few staff they have. There's been an enormous amount of staff attrition and turnover. They've just announced new leadership. There's a lot of things that are going on in the facilities planning office. We're very grateful that they, take hard looks at our projects and try to move them forward quickly. We use a system that BOCE's created, which allows us to get a third party to review documents, licensed architects and engineers selected by SED to expedite the review. That takes the timeline down, so it meets our schedule requirements. Otherwise, we'd be more exposed to some of these delays. That's the coping mechanism that we use. There's a small fee that goes with it, but it's worth its weight in gold in terms of getting the approvals done.
Yeah, I was curious when you said you want to go out to bid in February to have things lined up, which that all makes sense. You want to make sure. But then I was like, ooh, what is stated? So thank you.
Sure.
Yeah.
I just want to ask one follow-up. I'm only asking this now just to get it in the record, so I remember, as, well, I guess we're all sort of newbie-ish relatively. If we're looking at 2026, again, not to take away from what we're working on here and that great presentation, but there was at least, I don't know, 3 to 5 years of pre-planning that went into this capital project.
We need to
Are
do
we,
building condition surveys every 5 years, and that must be coming
We're
up
coming
in
up.
2
That's-
years, right?
Yep.
And then we start that process of prioritizing.
so
From that.
2024 we get it, and then we use that to build out.
That's
For
what
the
I'm saying when we do it
2026.
again.
So it's just like, what year is it? Like, how soon is that?
Work your
Is
absent
that-
now.
What's that?
Work your absent now.
I know, well, I feel like we're gonna blink and it's gonna be 2024.
In a prior facilities committee meeting, I think in the spring, we talked about and made a recommendation to the superintendent and the committee that we should look at a master plan in addition to the traditional building condition survey updates, because there are parts of our portfolio of buildings, I'm using real estate terms, that are deteriorated. They're well maintained, given the life cycle that's there, but if something's at the end of its life cycle, it needs to be looked at thoroughly for replacement. And there are things that are in this building. In particular, as an example, this building was completed and opened originally in 1957. There are things that are here that are still 1957 things. And, I've seen them. When I went to school here, they were in good shape. When I came back and started to do work in them 20 years ago, I thought they'd be replaced by now. They're not. And we really are going to need to look at that. It goes beyond building condition survey work. And you really talk about master planning and space planning and the type of things that we need to do in the 21st century for appropriate educational delivery, because it's not the same as it was in 1957. Even though we've made changes since then, there are still many things that need to be addressed. And I think master planning along with building condition survey is the right approach for the next several years, so that when we get to 2026, we have all the information on the table.
Any other questions from the board? Comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
We really appreciate you
Thank
being
you.
here, providing us an update. Okay, moving on to the agenda, I would ask for a motion to approve items number 8, 9, and 10, the consent items for business, personnel, and special education. Motion made by Megan, seconded by Ann. Discussion. Go ahead.
In there, yeah, I think under number 9. Yeah, it's just there's a little Averill Park Education Foundation donation there that I just wanted to get, yes, not, you're right. It's the typeface as well. Yeah. Yeah, there is, and I just wanted to, again, thank them for everything that they do, as part of the presentation as well. That, more giving, more awesome things we're able to do, courtesy of their generosity. And I just wanted to, in case folks don't know, I have it up on my refrigerator, the save the date for the annual gala. And I think they came back last year after missing a couple of years. It's November 18th down at the Old Daily. So if you can go, and who's ever watching from home, if you can go, Averill Park Education Foundation, that's on the 18th. That's all.
Any other questions, comments on the consent?
I'll just do my regular monthly. we review all of these things extensively before the meetings, and it's not just a matter of, oh, hey, here it is, and 5 seconds later we vote on it.
That agenda's open to the public, they
Yes,
can look at it all.
Just in case anyone might be new or not aware, a lot of time goes into this, and we're not just rubber stamping anything. Thank you.
Any further discussion? That I was wrong, it's not in the consent, it's separate. So I was looking for it too, I know she was getting in it, so. Okay. No other questions on the consent agenda, then we'll put it forth to a vote. All those in favor? Approved unanimously, thank you. So the next item is a couple action items, and the first one is to approve Leah Friedel as temporary COVID coordinator. Jackie makes a motion. Megan seconds. Discussion? We appreciate that we have this position, and hopefully there won't be a lot of COVID stuff. But we are definitely thankful that we have this position, that we're able to be prepared.
And just a reminder that it's at no cost to the taxpayer, it's coming from
That's
the
right.
county, not part of our funds.
Great. Yes. All right, any further discussion? All those in favor? Okay. Passes unanimously, thank you. And then item B is to approve the proposal for the Washington DC trip. That's April 21st through 24th in 2023. Megan makes a motion, Jackie seconds. Discussion.
I just want to point out how happy I was to see a good ratio of chaperones to students in attendance. Things happen, so I like that the chaperones aren't being stretched thin and that, it's proper coverage, so.
Thank you, Megan. Any further discussion on this field trip? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor? Aye, passes unanimously, thank you. And we have several resolutions tonight. The first one is to approve authorized representative for the WIDEA grant funding. Do I have a motion to approve that resolution? And seconded by Adam. Discussion? Do you have any comments on that, Carrie, or no? I mean, I think it was pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, it's just a procedural resolution, really.
Any just further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye, passes unanimously, thank you. Next one be to approve the memorandum of understanding between CEO and Averill Park Central School District. Do I have a motion to approve that? Samantha, seconded by Ann. Discussion? Hearing none, we'll call it to a vote. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. The next one is to approve the memorandum of agreement by and between the Averill Park Central School District and the Averill Park Teachers Association regarding the position of carpentry teacher. Jackie makes a motion, Adam seconds. It was a little race over there. Discussion? All right. Go ahead, Adam.
Thanks. For what it's worth, my son's in that class, and the first day of school is usually, how was it? And it's like, oh, I don't like this teacher, and I don't like this teacher, and there's a lot more don't likes than likes, because teachers are tough on the first day, because they have to be, and then they kind of back off a little bit. But there's been nothing but praise for Mr. Kozlowski so far among my son and his friends, so hopefully it all pans out and works well, but really good hire there. Thank you.
I just wanted to say I was just happy we were able to fulfill the position and offer this course again this year.
Absolutely. Any further discussion? We do all appreciate that. All right. Call you to a vote. All those in favor? It passes unanimously. Thank you. The next one is to approve the agreement between the Averill Park Central School District and Kyle Kozlowski to waive the tenure rights. Adam makes a motion, Megan seconds. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? passes unanimously. The next item is to approve the memorandum of agreement by and between the Averill Park Central School District and APTA regarding online alternative instruction. Do I have a motion? Megan makes a motion and seconds. Discussion? Hearing none, calling it to a vote. All those in favor? Aye, passes unanimously. This next one, to approve the agreement by and between Rensselaer County and the Averill Park Central School District regarding the student assistance specialist. I think we're going to table that until the next meeting. So we'll not be voting on that one at this point. And then the following one would to be approve attendance of school board members and Dr. Franchini to attend the NISBA's annual convention and educational expo in Syracuse on October 27th through 29th this year at a cost not to exceed $8,000. Do I have a motion? And seconded by Samantha. Discussion?
I just want to point out that my first year on the board, I attended the conference. It was sort of pre-COVID, but it was hugely valuable, the information that I learned there, and was able to, garner in terms of being an effective board member. So highly, highly recommend, going if anybody is available.
I agree. Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye, passes unanimously. The next item on our agenda is a policy review of policy 5100, the attendance policy. This is the first reading. The policy committee has looked at this because we're in the 5,000 series, and we've looked at this several times now because we've looked at the old version, a couple iterations, and now this latest version. So, has everybody read the policy? Anybody have any thoughts, comments, suggestions, updates, grammatical things? We've about, 8 iterations of this the policy committee before we brought it to you guys, so. There's been quite a bit. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I, at this point, make a motion to waive the second reading and accept this,
Approve the policy.
approve the policy as it's written?
Yes, so Ann makes a motion to waive the second reading and approve the policy. Megan seconds. Discussion on that.
I would like to thank the policy committee for the extensive work that goes into these things, because I will miss the grammatical errors every single time. And I can trust that all of you do a great job.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll call it to a vote. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to item number 14, presentation for teaching and learning. And that's all that.
All right, wait for the intro. Unfortunately, Tony took all your time. All right. No, so as we've been doing yearly, the presentation by Matt to update folks on what is going on in the teaching and learning side of the house. Know that following these presentations, we have the ALTs, the academic learning team presentation scheduled. So next week, we'll kick it off at the high school, then we'll move to the middle school and the elementary teams. So Matt will kind of set the stage for that and get us thinking in terms of the instructional side of the house as we start this school year.
Thank you, Dr. Franchini.
You're welcome.
So he just said exactly what I was going to say. I'm the leadoff hitter, but really the great presentations that we're going to see over the next few months are really going to highlight a lot of what's going on in the building. I'm going to give you the 300-foot view of what we've been doing with teaching and learning. Just as a side note, I was just talking to Terry before the meeting, it's been a wonderful opening from an instructional standpoint. Really does feel like we're back to a lot of our normal practices, and we're able to focus on this stuff. what I am amazed with as I was reflecting on this presentation and thinking about some of the accomplishments that Dr. Franchini highlighted on our opening day is how much we were able to do in the last 2.5 years, despite everything, in this area of teaching and learning. And you'll hear about some of that tonight. This has all been going on amidst all the other challenges that we were dealing with. I do like to point out every year that this is not a one-man show, supported by a lot of amazing teachers and administrators throughout the district, as well as some specific people that work under me in the Center for Teaching and Learning. So we have our staff and student support side, which is manned by Kate Dorgan. That focuses largely on professional development and response to intervention. We have data and accountability, where we produce a lot of our evidence-informed data so that we can help teachers make decisions about teaching and learning. And that's supported by Kristen Card and Doug Kramer. Our technology integration, both the guts, the network, and the stuff, as well as how do we best utilize it in the classroom, are supported by Lynn Burdick and Melissa Weatherwax. And finally, special education that you have seen here a few times is supported by Camille Harrelson and Liz Malone, who's our newly hired Assistant Director of Special Education. I'm going to touch on 6 different topics briefly tonight. So I just wanted to give you a heads up of where we're going. And I went back and looked at, I've done this now, this is my 4th presentation, kind of tried to look at what I've done in the past. I am going to hit on a few of the bigger topics that continue to be major themes for us in teaching and learning. And I've added in a couple new ones, things that have been going on, but I haven't really highlighted in past years. I felt it was important to bring those to light as well. I want to start with professional learning communities, which really is still the heart of what we're doing to support good instruction in the classroom. And I put up a quote from Rick and Becky Dufour, who are kind of the pioneers of professional learning communities in schools. And I think the bold italicized part that I did really do stress what we're trying to do here, which is we've been able to meet in groups. We've had department meetings and grade level meetings forever. It's really what we're trying to do within those groups that we have started to shift slightly, which is trying to focus on the right things. It's focusing on student learning, good instructional practices, and our students' achievement. And that is really the heart of what's been happening now for the last couple of years. If you remember from last year, we kind of did a refocus, a rebirth of our work with PLCs. We tried it a couple of years prior. It fell flat. And admittedly, I took the shot for that one. I tried to roll it out over one summer, thought I could do a good job doing it, and struggled, and really said it's time to kind of refocus it. So we brought in some support and did a much better job of it last summer, and it has taken off. And I'm really happy with where we've gone over the past year. And really it all starts over the summer. Every summer we have our teacher leaders gather for 2 days. If you recall, our teacher leaders represent all of the grade levels and departments throughout the district. So we meet here for 1 day, and we discuss professional learning communities. We get good professional development from a standing superintendent, Dr. Jason Andrews. He's been with us now the last 2 summers. And that really kicks off the year for us because we spend time with him kind of understanding where we're headed with PLCs. And then the next day we talk about how we're going to apply the learning that we got the prior day, and also look at what our goals and objectives are for the year. And so it's really the kickoff for all the work that you're going to hear about in subsequent months. So on the goals side of things, as you know, we have our 3 district goals. Those goals are handed to each of the buildings or each of the levels. K-5 is combined. All 3 buildings work together as a K-5 level. And then we have the middle school and the high school. Those 3 levels are broken into what are called BLTs. You'll hear a lot of stickers when we say BLTs. It stands for Building Learning Teams. Those building learning teams are made up of the administrators as well as the teacher leaders for those levels. And they set upon to develop measurable SMART targets every year. And those measurable SMART targets are then passed on to the ALTs, the academic learning teams, which is our name for our department and grade level teams. They develop the action steps that will help to meet those BLT SMART objectives. So if you think about it, we have our goals up here at the top. Those goals inform SMART objectives that are built at the building level. And then those are supported by action steps at the grade level or department level. So everyone is working. If you think of Dr. Franchini's picture with all the arrows, all those arrows are going in the right direction. At the same time, we set those goals for the year over the summer. We also do a lot of focus on our PLC questions. If you recall, last year, we focused solely on question 1, which was what is it we expect our students to learn? Our teachers did an amazing job working in teams all year, highlighting the essential standards that were critical for their content areas. So we know that the state gives us loads of standards that we have to focus on. But we also know that there are usually anywhere from 8 to 12 that are truly essential. We knew this because when we were in COVID, we couldn't teach everything. So we started to identify what were the really important things that we know every kid needs to know before they move on to the next level. So we spent last year really identifying that. That's not just sitting in a room and saying, okay, let's pick 8 out of the box here. It's a lot of discussion and a lot of protection of what they've done in the past. You have things that you like to teach, and you're defending that with your colleagues and saying, okay, what's really important? And more importantly, what's going to be important as they move to the next level? So this was a year-long process, and we're still not done. As Dr. Andrews reminded us, this never ends. You're always going to be talking about what's essential. It's very likely we could have a team get together this year and say, boy, we said last year this was important, but we can't do that unless we do this other standard. And that's the type of discussion we want our PLCs to have. So that was largely what we got to last year. Again, still work in progress, but we are going to shift now to question 2 to kind of dovetail into question 1, which is how will we know when they have learned it? And that's going to largely focus on connecting those essential standards to assessments. And when we talk about assessments, we're talking about formative assessments, which are more of like quick check-ins. They're not the midterm or final, but rather the things that you do on a weekly and monthly basis to make sure your kids are understanding what it is you're teaching. They largely are made up of quick checks that are then used. You take the data from that to inform instruction so that you can shift instruction if you realize, hey, my kids didn't get it. We got to go back and do that again. If you wait for a midterm to do it, it's too late. So we want our teams to be doing more periodic check-ins. And then having those discussions amongst their teams about how the students did, and then also talking about what tools they can use to deliver. There's a lot of ways to deliver formative assessments. And again, formative assessments aren't necessarily a quiz or a test. There's a lot of different ways you can check in with your students to make sure they understand. So those would be the types of discussions we'll have this year regarding our PLCs. So that is the major foundation. And again, will be a huge focus for what we do in teaching and learning. I'm going to shift next to our teaching and learning cabinet, which I introduced last year at this time to the board. This is a new group, started last year, made up of 9 teachers representing all 3 levels of the district. This is their vision statement. It was essentially a group that was formed with the idea of saying there's a lot of things going on in education out in this world. And some of those things might be important for us to look at here at Averill Park. Who's going to be able to focus on that? So this group was formed with the idea of pulling in those trends and topics that we know are happening all around and saying, does this make sense for us here? So last year, they spent the year researching. We had a topic board of probably about 40 or 50 different topics. We boiled it down to 3. And we broke into 3 different groups, and they did a lot of research, a lot of reaching out to schools, and then they presented that research to the building principals in the springtime. And from that point into this year, we're going to start to narrow into how we can actually implement these ideas. The 3 topics are restorative practices, which again are really, it's something we've been doing here, but not universal. And it's an approach to build community, strengthen relationships. It really helps both students and teachers deal with conflict before it escalates. So it's a way for us to manage those conflicts. So those are things that we're going to weave into some of our social and emotional skill practice, our Warrior Wednesdays, which we talked about last month. Along those lines, we have growth mindset, which was our second research project. We think that that's also something that could be woven into some of that Warrior Wednesday work. And that's the belief that you can grow as a student, that you're not locked into who you are, that with hard work, determination, you can keep improving. It builds confidence, resiliency, and risk-taking. Really important skill for our kids to have. And again, we have aspects of it going on as a district, but we want to just weave it in to make sure it's more universally done. The third research project was digital portfolios. Quite honestly, not likely to be the name going forward. It's what people know it as, but it has a certain connotation about it that we want to get away from. but it's essentially a personalized library of learning, talents, and interests developed over time. It's a way for a student to walk out of here with a portfolio of what they've done from the time they were in kindergarten. It's a way for them to build a digital footprint so that if someone searches their name on Google, something good comes up, and it shows who they are as a student here at Averill Park. This is a big undertaking to do. This is one that we're going to largely focus on as a full group in the cabinet. It will take some time to implement, so we'll start doing some small pieces of it this year with some piloting work, and then keep flowing that out into future years. So their efforts last year really have paved the way for 3 very exciting initiatives that we'll be able to tackle as a district. You all know about curriculum renewal. I'm just going to remind you about it. You heard some awesome presentations in the spring. Just as a reminder, why do we do renewal? We want to make sure that we are constantly reviewing our curriculum and instructional practices. We want to make sure that we're meeting our current standards. We want to make sure that we're aligning vertically, that what's happening in the elementary folds nicely into the middle school, which then folds nicely into the high school. So we want to get those groups of teachers together, not just across horizontally in a building, but from top to bottom, from elementary to middle and high school. And then if there's things that we want to modify, change, remove, that there's a process to do that. So renewal is really the vehicle to identify those things that we want to improve in our educational program in a given content area. So you know that, you heard about some awesome work from our art department, our social and emotional skills, as well as our science department. I just wanted to point out what's coming down the road for this year. We have on deck later in the year, social studies, technology, and library media. So they will have one meeting this year that will start in the spring that sets the table for next year. This past spring, our math department met, and they will actually be embarking in a first full year of renewal starting this month, actually. So they'll be meeting as a K-12 group to talk about math practices, and then they'll spend the year reviewing what we're currently doing, and then identify areas in need of modification, improvement, and so on for next year, and then they'll be moving into the revise stage next year. So I put the stars next to review and revise because those really are the chunk of the time of renewal. They do spend close to 1 day each month over 2 years doing this kind of work. So that math will be doing quite a bit this year, as well as science, art, and SEL will continue their work from last year. They did their review, they identified things, now they're starting to actually implement some of that into their practices. And just to point out, I don't think we've mentioned art department, this room, and the artwork in here is just awesome. So I want to make sure we acknowledge that too. It's a tremendous enhancement here. So thanks for the art department. I don't know if it was part of renewal, but it was pretty awesome that they came and did this. We do, if you remember, we had multiple presentations this past year from our teams that were in review, that you could see that in science, art, and SEL. We only have math this year. We intended to have PE be part of that as well, but with the turnover in that department, we decided to punt them a little bit further down the road until we got those teachers, no pun intended, until we had those teachers be part of our culture a little bit longer and hopefully get them into the mix as well. So we pushed them out a little bit. Response intervention, our RTI efforts. We continue to focus on our students that are struggling and making sure that they have the supports needed to be successful. We will continue to do universal screenings to start the year. Those will happen the next few weeks. Every student in K-8 gets screened to check where they are in terms of their literacy and math skills. We then have data meetings to discuss. Those data meetings are comprised of a number of different individuals to identify which students need additional supports. Those additional supports likely come from our AIS staff, our academic intervention support staff. If you remember, that was staff that we were able to increase using stimulus funds. So those efforts are still as critical as they were a year ago. We're thrilled to still have those people be able to continue to support our students. And we look at strategies to explore all hands on deck. We know stimulus money doesn't last forever. We are looking at ways that some of this intervention support can happen in the classroom. We call that tier 1, tier 2 support. Tier 3 is typically when the student goes out and gets services from an AIS teacher. So we are looking at ways that we can bring that back into the classroom. And then we also had our Summer Blast program, which was, we talked about not a traditional summer school. We're not looking to make up ground with students. We're looking to maintain where they're at. We know that particularly at the elementary level, being away for a couple months can cause students to slip a little bit. So by having them come in for a month over the summer allows us to maintain that, pick that back up as soon as they come starting in September. Again, Summer Blast was funded through stimulus funds, set to expire after this summer. Exploring other ways to potentially try to keep it going in some shape or form. May not look exactly like we've done it, but looking at other funding options since we won't have stimulus funds. And just as a point of reference, those meetings with all those people that you saw on the previous slide, there's a lot of data that gets used. It's not just anecdotal. It's not, hey, I think this kid is having a hard time reading. We use a lot of different reference points when having those discussions. It's very much evidence informed when a student does get AIS services. And our tremendous data team here has built some of these structures to allow those conversations to be incredibly meaningful. And speaking of data, we have been working on, almost since the time I started here, a system called AP Inquiry. It's a homegrown data visualization system. It allows us to build our own dashboards to look at all kinds of data. What is nice about it is we're doing it ourselves. And typically when you buy products, and a lot of schools have these kinds of products, when you buy products, they're answering questions that you may not be asking. We're able to actually build data visualizations ourselves to answer our own questions. And so it's been a lot more productive, a lot more meaningful. I mentioned Kristen and Doug. The two of them have built amazing dashboards over the past few years. Admittedly, we're still rolling into getting people to use it more regularly. This year, I think we'll be able to push it a little bit more than we did last year. Obviously, with the challenges we faced, it was a little bit lower of a priority. Now we can start to build that up. I put up just a couple screen grabs. You won't be able to see the details of it, but you'll get an idea of the stuff they're creating. This is a dashboard that's built that was built to track our district goals. So at any point throughout the year, a building leader can go in and say, okay, the SMART target, the SMART objective that our BLT set for us, where are we? Rather than set it in July and check in June, did we hit it? They could actually check in throughout the year on those targets for each one of the three goals. We built a dashboard that looks at assessment results. Again, you can't see the detail of it, but what this is a sample from a Regents report. It identifies every standard on the Regents, how our students did on each question for that standard, and highlights in either red or gray if it's an area of need or an area that we're doing quite well in, and then also identifies the specific questions. So a group of teachers can look at the questions, see how our students did. We built last year a dashboard on discipline. We know that discipline cases were up last year. We wanted to see where were the problem points, were there certain offenses, were there certain times of day. So they were able to build the dashboard to give us that information. And then the big one that was rolled out last year, what Kristen refers to as the baseball card. And this is something she's been trying to do for a long, long time, and we have the tool to do it. The people who meet to talk about our students, whether it be administration, counselors, teachers, they can literally pull up the baseball card and have everything they need on that student right there. Attendance, discipline, test results, quarterly grades, interventions, it's all right there instead of jumping to this sheet and this screen and this tool. She brings it all into one place. It just makes the conversation so much more meaningful to have it all there. So these are all built by our people here, and they're extremely useful tools. I'm really proud of where we're headed with the AP Inquiry system. And finally, I'll talk a little bit about Goal 3. We brought this in a few years ago because, as you just saw, data has really become part of what we do as a district. That used to be its own goal. We know now it's supporting really all aspects of our district. So Goal 3 was changed to be students will be digitally fluent, demonstrating the ability to live productively and safely in a technology-influenced society. A lot of words there. The key phrase from that is digital fluency. We want our students to not just use a computer, but use it in a way that's productive, effective, creative, collaborative. There's a lot of work to be done with that. I think our students can use technology, but I'm not sure that they efficiently use it. And those are things that we want to make sure they do. Coincidentally, or maybe not coincidentally, New York State released a whole series of computer science and digital fluency standards. These came out in 2020, right around the time that Goal 3 was readopted. And we are responsible as a district to have these in place by September of 2024. So 2 years from now, we have to be implementing these standards. So this will be a major focus for us this year. We have spent the last year digging into the standards, kind of changing them with a little more plain language to help us understand what they actually mean, identifying practices. A lot of things we do currently do, we just want to make sure we're completely aligned. So you'll be hearing more about this in future reports, where we're at, but this will be a big year for us to make sure these standards do get rolled out, and that we truly understand what they mean in terms of using technology from all levels, K through 12. So that is where we're at with teaching and learning. I'll open up to any questions.
And then Megan.
Thanks. That was a great presentation.
Thanks,
Thank you, Matt. Boy, there's a lot of exciting things going on. That the development of the AP inquiry program in-house is something you can be rightfully proud of. Well, I know that takes a lot of work, and it brings things together for us to take a look at what needs to be improved or what needs to be changed. I'm interested in RTI, the response to any interventions, and the data that's connected with that. Will data, and not names or of individual students, but let's say of the data connected with certain programs that are being used in responses, be available to others outside of the teaching staff, like board members, for example, or anyone else, even the public?
Yeah, we could, obviously not individual student data, but in terms of where we're at as a grade level district building, that's all data that we can compile. We actually do compile, so the buildings can see where they were this year compared to last year in terms of the student body. That more general data is something that we could absolutely present on.
That's terrific. What I really want to focus on too is the information that was provided earlier about the 1 through 5 literacy rates. And I'm interested in improving those numbers.
Okay.
And if you could supply us that data at future board meetings,
Sure.
say periodically, that would be much appreciated.
Absolutely. We got a great tool to do it, so yeah, I'd be happy to.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Actually, I want to piggyback off of a reference that Doug made to the data, because I'm seeing articles and studies that are coming out now indicating long-term worries and effects of what the last 2 years have had on students in their terms of growth and development and their ability to retain information, and modifications that need to be made for the learning standards. So as it relates to the response to intervention, and you had referenced that the COVID funding is kind of supposed to be running out for the summer intervention programs and things like that. Is there any way that we can use that compiled data for advocacy efforts? What can we do to take that data to the state and federal level to advocate for extensions of additional funding, because our students aren't just going to be okay because the federal government decided that they were, or because the state has decided that they want to forget that COVID existed. So, and what the effects are long-term for students who are going to need additional intervention after this year. What can we do in regards to that? And you don't have to answer that now. Maybe if you want to let me know if there are any advocacy efforts that are already underway, and what we can do to be involved in that to, bring those things to light for people who should be continuing that funding further. But also just an observation to the new employees that have joined the district in the last year. We had a lot of retirements last year and the year before. And to, I was going to save it for my board report, but welcome to our new district employees, our teachers, our aides, our fundamental staff that keep our facilities going. Welcome. We appreciate you. But also as it relates to this process, I know you said you had kind of given PE a pass for this year because of the changeover in the department. If I could make a suggestion to let those employees observe the process, that might help better prepare them for next year when they're going to enter the group. You may have already thought of it, but just in terms of when you join a new environment, sometimes it can be very intimidating not knowing what's going to be expected. So allowing them to shadow the process might help better prepare them to have a successful year, next year when it comes their turn.
Sure, yeah. And we also, the being part of a renewal team is completely voluntary. So in terms of just participation, we've talked to last year's renewals about doing some testimonials for us to show them it's not a bad thing. It really is an opportunity for you to meet as a group. So we are still, beating the pavement to get people to want to participate in this, because it's a new process. It's still something that's new to everyone, whether you're new or not. So.
Right, and when you have a department that is almost, so many new people, sometimes it comes down to somebody being voluntold and not, volunteering, and that can be even more intimidating.
Yeah, sure.
So inviting them to observe the process might help make it a little bit more comfortable for them. So
Yeah, thanks.
just my thoughts.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Just a couple of quick points. Thank you. Wow.
Thanks.
So exciting, and I kind of have this feeling like I'm sad that my kids are all graduated and they're gonna miss out on these wonderful initiatives that you're taking, and they just a little jealous. But that's it. Great for the kids coming up and our community as a whole. It's just all really good stuff. Renewal, you talked about renewal, how they're, they kind of look at themselves and ask if, we should be omitting something, we should be adding something, we should be changing something. How much of this renewal process is driven by SED demands?
Well, I mean, you can't deny the standards are part of that, and depending on which standards and which group, some of the standards are fairly new. We've had a lot of new standards come in the last few years. And while we certainly are adopting the standards, you want to make sure that that's happening. So it's an opportunity for them to look and say, hey, do we capture it? Science is a great example. Their standards, they came in 2017 or 2018, I believe. But the actual rubber didn't really hit the road until like last year. Kind of tough to bring in new standards last year with everything else going on. So they've spent a lot of time looking at those standards and what that really looks like. And you heard in the spring from the elementary, it's a big change for them. And so in a sense, the state does drive some of that, but you do have local freedom for how you do it. So you can't change the what, but you certainly can change the how. And the practices that we choose to do are locally decided upon.
And the other thing just kind of struck me as you were showing us a little bit of your AP inquiry tables and emphasizing the amount of data. I just got this passing thought, do we have a really good backup firewall security kind of system?
Right, yeah.
I mean, we would be up our favorite creek if we lost any of this. Seriously, how are we prepared with, UPSs and firewalls and all that protecting this data?
Yeah, so this one was interesting too, because the first year that it's based on a program called Tableau. And the first year that we used this program, we actually did it through our local BOE. So they were hosting it. And I don't know if we've talked a little bit about Ed Law 2D, which is a requirement that came in my first year that requires any system that we use, the person who has your data has to sign off on whether or not they're protecting your data. And Tableau would not go into an agreement with BOCES to do it. So we couldn't go through BOCES, we had to do it ourselves. And so now we host that data here. It's not sitting out in the cloud. So it's behind our own firewall. It's backed up to our own backup servers. So we have a main server it sits on, and it goes to like a virtual server. And that virtual server sends a backup to like an offsite storage location as well, so that we don't lose it. But keep in mind that the nice part with this is all of our data is actually in existing systems like School Tool. We pull a lot of stuff out of School Tool. That's its own thing. The Tableau servers here and School Tools here, we just kind of send what we need from here to there. So the backup of Tableau isn't of much concern as School Tool. School Tool is the thing and that's well protected. That's probably one of the brains.
It just occurred to me, wow, this is really important stuff.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we're all backed up.
Yeah, very secure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I guess maybe I'm gonna piggyback. Like just a different kind of, maybe a more old school firewall. Just, you mentioned something about the dashboard and being able to like pull up a kid's, like, was it under our TI? But like, you can sort of get that picture of the student. And the teacher who's doing that, or like, who's doing that? Do they have any kind of authorization? Like, is it in a physical, like, again, this is very 1987, is it in a physical, like, card, and they're looking at something on paper and then it falls?
It's very digital. It's very digital. So everything is permission based. So in Tableau, you can lock it down so that a dashboard can only be seen by a person, or you can lock within a dashboard that, like, I could only look, if I'm a third grade teacher, I can only see third grade data, even though it's the same dashboard that has third and fifth grade, I can't see that because I'm a third grade teacher. So it's all based on user permissions, and we can lock it however much we need to. We've got a lot of flexibility with it.
Just so we get, we don't have like individual kids, and I totally know that you guys are focused on.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate all these efforts because it's great to see the teachers and in their teams evaluating and reevaluating themselves and saying, oh, here's the standards, but then, oh, what you said at the beginning, like, oh, wait, we gotta go back and capture this one because we can't do this. So I think that's great that it comes from within and not from above, because I think that's so valuable in the buy-in. But then having all that data to support how we make the next move is fantastic. And I'm glad, we've been talking about data-driven for years since I've been on the board. And now we're here and it's really coming to fruition, and you can see how it's being built into the curriculum, and I'm so, I know it's been a process, and I'm really glad that we're here now. So.
And I think an important point too, we've collected data here for a long time, but we haven't really used it, and used it in a way that helps teaching and learning. And I think so it's collect just for the sake of collecting. So I think we're starting to now build better systems. We're building a culture that's looking at the right kind of data, not trying to collecting the things that are important to help our students ultimately. So I think that's been a slight shift in how we're approaching it too.
Yeah, well, thank you, I appreciate that.
I think, Jesse, if I could just jump in,
Yeah.
As we leave Matt in his presentation. I want to thank Matt. We went after recruiting Matt pretty strongly to get him here with the hope that this would actually come to fruition. I can't believe this is presentation number 4. It has taken a while to get to this point, but it's clearly been quite a process to get us to where we are now. We thank Matt for his leadership. What also I think needs to be noted, a couple of things actually. The second is the work of our building level leadership, our principals, and our building level administrative team. We have a group now that is very, very focused on instructional leadership, and that has not always been the case. And so we've had people here who are truly instructional leaders who are leading their buildings and departments with the goal and the focus on instruction. I think third, and equally as important, and it's nice to have Terry here, the partnership with the APTA. You see from the agreements that we have, the relationship and the partnership and the trust, it has truly been a collaborative effort. And as much as Matt has led the team and the principals, and none of this gets done without the work of APTA and teachers who are actually in the trenches and who have been fantastic partners in building this and looking to their credit not to be stagnant, but to push the ball forward and to try new things. This PLC thing was new, as Matt alluded to, did not start off on the best of foots, right? So we had to do some reimagining, we had to do some fixing, and I appreciate their role in this. And then finally, we try to do these educational, instructional parts before the budget season, but they're inevitably intertwined. And I, as we go through this stuff, always think of the words of Sharon when she said in the bad old days, the major lesson learned was when the financial cuts came, we had to make some very tough decisions. And the things that we gutted first were these structures and these systems that we had in place. The goal was to keep FTE, keep as many people in the classroom, and I'm certainly well intended. But she always said, if you go back, we didn't pay enough attention to the structures. And then when stuff came out, like the Common Core and those things, we weren't able to adapt and be flexible. And as we had eventually, because we were kind of always in a never-ending budget cycle, the board's commitment to those teacher leader positions, which at one point, remember, not too long ago, it was my 6th year, we didn't have those at all, right? So we brought those back slowly and then kind of accelerated it. Those positions are crucially important to the success of all of this. And the teaching and learning cabinet, which again is another new thing the board supported. So I think it's just important to keep that in mind, maybe in February and in March. We don't know obviously what the budget situation is going to be like, but I think it's easy to kind of take a broad brush and say, oh, we can cut those 20 teacher leaders at that stipend amount and save a lot of money. it might be the easy thing to do, it might seem like that, but you have to be very cautious about the decisions we make and the long-term impact it has on the structures and the systems in place. That's all.
Thank you. Did anybody have any other questions for Matt now that he's sitting down? He's going TikTok now.
It's not a question. It's a compliment, and I appreciate the long-term commitment. In the broader education field, oftentimes it's not something you see that where you want a quick payoff, and a lot of other school districts suffer from sort of a lack of long-term vision or stick-to-itiveness, might normally call it. And it's hard, you sort of have to, A, stick around, so thank you. And B, sort of get back up when things don't go your way, and be willing to not have it be exactly right the first year, or the second year, or the fourth year, but keep your eyes on the prize. And again, that the broader education field, especially K-12 and even like K-5, as when you look at other districts, that sort of willingness to stick around and see something through for the long term, which is really what it takes, can be rare. And so I appreciate that, Matt and Tim and everybody else.
Thank you very much. You all set? Any other- Okay. All right, thank you very much. That was great presentation. The next item on the agenda is for public comments in general. Do we have any blue sheets? Okay, because this is the opportunity for the public, those wishing to address the board, to complete a request form. We all set? All right, just want to make sure that's there. All right, that brings us to item number 16, board member reports. Adam, would you like to go first?
I would, thanks. So I'll be the first, actually the second, because Megan's good at this, to say welcome back, students, faculty, and staff, to what feels like normalcy, first year in a while without the immense distraction of a global pandemic. So it's just great to be back here. The artwork on the walls is beautiful and inspiring. It's something we do really well, especially at the high school, but I've always been impressed with it. It's great to be surrounded by it. It's fantastic. Matt, I really enjoyed your presentation. I'm a data guy, and AP inquiry is really powerful. And I want to read you one of my favorite quotes from Lord Kelvin, which is, when you can measure what you're speaking about and express it in numbers, you know something about it. When you cannot express it in numbers, your knowledge is of a meager and unsatisfactory kind. I just thought that was really good as an engineer. So thank you for keeping us away from the meager and unsatisfactory kind of knowledge. I appreciate that. And I also want to thank Tony for a tremendous presentation. We're spending over $28 million on building and grounds renovations, and that's a big nut, and that's a lot of money. We get a bunch back from the state, which is good, but we're spending a lot of money also with Saratoga Project Management. And when we initially entered into that agreement, I had some concerns about the value we were getting for the money. And I spoke with Jim and some others about this. And Tony's done a really good job, especially tonight, of explaining the very rare and valuable, somewhat exclusive skills that he and Saratoga Project Management will bring to this process. It's not just project management. It's compliance with the New York State processes. It's navigating approvals. It's making sure that we stay within the law when we're going through the bidding process. It's reporting back to the board. It's ensuring that you're working within this pretty unique framework of government and school to get something done in tough times. So I appreciate that, and I feel like we're certainly employ the right firm to help us get through it. So I just want to thank you. So that's my report. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Adam. Jackie?
I think this is
Yeah, there you go.
Is it on? Yeah. I just wanted to say, piggyback on what Adam said, is great beginning of the school year, and I'm so happy all the teachers are so excited to have the kids back, and they're excited everything's a little more normal this year, and I know I was really excited about that. And so, and I'm really appreciative of all the new employees that we have as well to help us round out our gaps that we had going into the year. And the presentations tonight were really great, and I think it was really informative for everybody to really see all the work that actually goes into all the things that we do here in a, as you said before, a very comprehensive way and easy to understand. So I appreciate those. Thank you.
Thanks, Jackie. Go ahead.
I wanted to also mention the artwork. That dog in the corner over there has been staring at me the morning. Anyway, I love that picture. But anyway, I also would like to thank someone who's been here at every meeting, hasn't been mentioned in the past, but has the room set up for us meticulously every meeting, and that's Linda Fitzpatrick. Linda, thank you very much for the work you do at every meeting and sit through these meetings hour after hour, and then clean up afterwards and get it all back together. Linda, thank you very much. I also wanted to mention that, other than that artwork and that dog over there, that I attended a facilities meeting on August 24th here at the district, and I won't cover all of the topics that were talked about because I know some of the other board members were either in attendance or online with us, but a couple of the topics were interesting. We're waiting for more information from New York State about the implementation of electric bus infrastructure and electric buses, which we know are coming down the line. And that seems to be a really interesting development over the next few years. I don't know what implications it means at this point for an infrastructure. But anyway, I think it's going to be big. Also, I was glad to hear that our PFOA system, filter system in Algonquin is fully installed at this point. And the district has been found to be the victim of the PFOAs and not a generator of the PFOAs. So that's an important distinction at this point in terms of moving forward. And I assume that system is going to be operational, if it's not already operational, to filter our water over there. And that's really good news. I'll leave the other topics for any of the other board members who'd like to cover it who were at that meeting, but that's my report.
Thank you, Doug, and thanks for acknowledging that. Probably long overdue. Megan?
Thank you, and thanks, Doug. I appreciate it. I was also at the facilities meeting. Just wanted to give a shout out to our grounds maintenance and facilities personnel who are second to none. We have exceptional students. I say it frequently. You'll hear me say it publicly and on social media. We have exceptional students in this district, but we are also blessed with exceptional staff and exceptional teachers who, just to piggyback on what Jim said about the teacher learning, those groups and that extra work that goes involved. Our teachers, I think it's commonly, a common misconception is that teachers have it easy and, they take summers off and they get to work early hours in the day. Our teachers, I've seen countless examples of our teachers going well above and beyond, taking the extra work of advisorships for clubs, taking the extra work of being a teacher leader, of helping mentor colleagues who are seeking tenure. And I don't think that any of our employees, be it our bus drivers who run extra routes, our administrators who work in extensive hours, our teachers who work extensive hours, developing lesson plans and making sure they're providing the absolute best that they can for the students. I don't think they get enough recognition because it's not visible necessarily, but they're seen and they're appreciated. So from the exceptional students of the district, thank you. I want to say a welcome to all our new families in the district. I know there are some families who joined us over the summer and are new in the community, so welcome. We love to have you with us, and we hope that you come and participate with us and interact and let us know if there's anything that you need. Congratulations to our teachers and our students for completing their first week of school. Here's to many more positive things. And I'm sure I had other things I wanted to talk about, but I'm exhausted, so thank you. And I also to the artwork and to Mr. Engel, who's on the camera with us every month, thank you so much. If you wouldn't mind panning at the end so that our community can see this beautiful artwork, because it's such a great addition to this room.
Thank you. Anne?
That's one thing about being on the board for a little while. As you move up this way, you kind of lose your thunder because everybody says everything you wanted to say. And just took my one thing, which is to thank Mr. Engel for sitting behind the camera, similar to Linda setting us up. But I'm cautiously optimistic about this year. It was so fun to see all the first day pictures on Facebook when I'm supposed to be working. Just real quick. I miss those and hold on to those moments because they go very quickly. But I was very, very impressed with both of the presentations tonight. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Tony, who's not here. That's one of the great parts of sitting up here is just getting to see all the amazing work that's getting done every day. And I'm so grateful and appreciative for that. But everything else has been said. So thank you.
Thanks, Anne. Samantha?
I'm going to say just one thing about the art, and it's not just how amazing it is, but whoever set it up. It just, like this, the design, the stylistic effect of walking in the room was, you feel like you're someone special. Not that it's not special about it, but it really is. Well, and as somebody who has no artistic talent, I'm really quite blown away. I'm just coming in, so having gotten through almost the first week of school, especially with kids who were just so active. I'm so grateful. It was a great summer. I'm so grateful. It's not summer anymore, and my kids are back with all the amazing teachers. And one of those pictures up there was the PES ice cream social, which we've now gone to for, I don't even know, however many years, 6 years, I guess. And we were having conversations, and my third grader got, we met her new third grade teacher. And I said, oh my gosh, we're so lucky we got Miss Gloria. And then I stopped and I said, you know what, why do I keep saying that? It has nothing to do with luck. We're not lucky. It's on purpose. It's not by accident that we just happened to get a great second grade teacher in Miss Dickinson and Miss Primo in kindergarten. It's the other kindergarten teachers are also amazing. Whoever you get are these amazing, certainly in our experience at the elementary school, and it's deliberate. And so it's not luck. We are not lucky to have Miss Gloria. We are in a school district that prioritizes really fantastic teachers. What I also appreciate, I just want to say again, as it's the beginning of school, and to kind of parents, folks who might be watching this on the YouTube, on the internets. I have a lot going on. I take that after my mom, I'm a little scatterbrained, it's okay. Miss Wicks, the other folks now over at AMS, there's a lot of communications back and forth, and I'm so grateful that, I get these into my inbox. It's very easy to be like, oh, but they are to the point. They tell me what I need to know. So for folks, especially if you're newer to the district or have younger kids coming up, open those email and PES. It's the SMORE, it's the newsletter. Ms. Wicks gets it out rigorously, and it really has, important information. Tomorrow night is the AMS for folks. It's the learning launch, and so we get to go in and see what the kids are doing at AMS tomorrow night. There's the Girls on the Run. If you have a runner, at PES, you got 2 spots open. Get in there quick before they're gone, and that starts. So I just encourage everyone to use the website, open up those emails from whichever school administrator, because, it's not a big long thing, it's much more brief than I usually am. And truthfully, and things are like highlighted and straight to the point and what you need to know for those of us as parents who are just kind of off our heads all the time. And so just open, check your inbox and show up at all these fun things.
Excellent, thank you. All right, yes, welcome everyone, welcome back. I don't really have anything to add that hasn't already been said. We do appreciate everyone in the room, right? Linda, and then the rest of the team that's up here. I think we're a world-class district and this team helps keep us going, so we really appreciate that. All right, that brings us to the last item to adjourn. Jackie makes a motion, Megan seconds.
How did you get up there?
She had it up before. Any discussion on that? All right, all those in favor? Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Oh, sweet Mary. I have to tell you. Cheers. Thank you for what you're shooting the whole day.
Oh, really? Because
Yeah, no.